Thanks for joining me on my Marvel Comics Transformers retrospective. In the 80s, many toys had their own promotional comic books, and Transformers was no exception. However, while most of these novelties ran for only a handful of issues, Transformers ran for a total of 80 issues, along with a couple limited series, despite having been originally advertised as a 4-issue limited series. The series ran from 1984 to 1991. Now, I don't believe I ever read a comic before this, but I was a huge Transformers fan, so I got my hands on anything Transformer related. For some reason, I seem to remember buying these first several issues in 2-packs, like issue 1 and 2, issue 3, 4, maybe even as far as into the teens. Granted, this was when I was all of 8 or 9 years old, so I can't be for certain. If anyone has more info on this, I'd love to know. The comics loosely followed the story featured in the cartoon. The Autobots and Decepticons arrive on Earth while on board the Ark, which crash lands at the base of a volcano, and they awaken millions of years later. Issue 1 has a rather interesting cover, unlike anything seen later on, and it's now become iconic. In the first issues, you can tell it's all about selling the toys. When the Transformers first awaken on the Ark, both the Autobots and Decepticons have panels where they all introduce themselves in the third person, and give some information about their personalities or abilities. Basically one of the biggest and silliest info drops I've ever seen. Also, at this point, some characters like Ironhide, Ratchet, and Bumblebee resemble their toys more so than their cartoon counterparts. But this changes fairly quickly after the first few issues. One minor design change that lasts the entire run is Megatron's head, which is colored black rather than gray to match his body. Early on I can see they weren't so concerned about this design deviation, but they stuck with it the entire run. They meet up with a father and son, Sparkplug and Spike Witwicky. Wait, make that Sparkplug and Buster. One thing you'll find is it's near impossible to keep track of all the different Transformer continuities, and every one cherry-picks elements from the others. The father, who goes by Sparkplug, makes perfect sense as he's a mechanic in the comics, yet both he and his son were oil rig workers in the cartoon. So why did Spike get the name change to Buster in the comic? Who knows? Issue 3 features Spider-Man in the symbiont suit. Now, I wasn't reading any other comics at this time. I always liked Spider-Man, but my knowledge was limited to cartoons and other merchandise. So, what's this black suit all about anyway? This was one of the few references to the greater Marvel universe throughout the entire run. Transformers sort of became its own thing. Now, that suited me fine, as one of my biggest gripes with comics is feeling you must follow the broader universe when your interest may just only lie in one or two characters. Issue 5 has one of my favorite covers in the entire run, and I've heard many people say the same thing. The artist is Mark Bright, if you wanted to know. At the end of the previous issue, Shockwave shows up, and man oh man is he powerful. In the cartoon, his strength was in his intellect. In the comics, he's just as powerful as Megatron. In issue 7, Ratchet and Megatron form an unlikely alliance to combat Shockwave. A doctor and one of the most destructive Transformers in existence. Yin and Yang, complete opposites. This relationship between the two pops up a number of times throughout the run, and takes some interesting turns. The plan is for Ratchet to find and repair the Dinobots, who had stopped Shockwave in the past. Now, I recently said in an episode we recorded that the Transformer movie introduced the concept of the Matrix of Leadership, or Creation Matrix. I was wrong. Sort of. While the Matrix was first seen in physical form in the movie, the first appearance to it was all the way back here in the comics. At one point, to keep it out of Shockwave's hands, Optimus Prime mentally transfers the Matrix to Buster. It's not a physical item at this point, and it gives Buster telekinetic powers. During this time, we also get introduced to Circuit Breaker, who becomes a human nemesis, and she will crop up to harass both the Autobots and Decepticons. The next few issues start introducing a host of new characters, because toys aren't going to sell themselves. In issues 17 and 18, we head to Cybertron for an adventure with Blaster, taking center stage. This story was a good one. It even introduced a brand new villain in the form of Straxus. who didn't have a cartoon or toy counterpart. This story also brings the space bridge concept to the comics, though unlike the cartoon, this one is more literal in that it actually looks like a giant suspension bridge. This device brings Blaster and a few others to Earth. We get more introductions to new characters like Omega Supreme, the Aerial Bots, and Stunicons. Then we get to issue 24. If there is one consistency among the Transformers universes, it's that Optimus Prime will die at some point. However, here, this takes place in about the worst, least heroic fashion possible. While you could say he dies being honorable, this is no way for a hero like Prime to go out. Since Prime's gone, or is he, why not let Megatron bite the dust too? Megatron is obsessed with the feeling Prime is still alive somehow. Shockwave thinks he sees an opening to unseat Megatron again, and dispatches the Predacons to kill Megatron. But before they can finish him off, he blows up the space bridge with himself on it in what appears to be suicide. We are then introduced to another human nemesis, the Mechanic, followed by issue 27 with Trypticon. Now, something interesting here is that many characters that normally would fight each other, say the Aerial Bots versus the Stunicons, these characters generally get introduced in the same issue, story, or at least back-to-back issues. However, this is the only issue featuring Trypticon at all. And more baffling is that Metroplex never appears in the comics. I thought we were trying to sell toys here. Now, issue 33 and 34 are strange additions. I remember them reading and thinking, what the heck did I miss here? It's because these two issues were reprints of the UK Marvel Comics Transformers run and have no bearing on the US run and the current storylines. During this time, there was a 4-issue limited series called Headmasters, which introduced characters from the Headmasters and Target Master toy lines. Issue 38 of the main series brought the Headmasters to Earth and into the storyline proper. By issue 40, we learn that Optimus Prime is alive. Who would have guessed? And that his mind was copied onto a floppy disk? Okay then. 2 issues later, Prime gets a new body and is now Power Master Optimus Prime. Issue 43 takes us to the future post the animated Transformer movie. Now, I'll clarify, it's the future of the cartoon universe and not the comic universe. So, just like 33 and 34, it really has no bearing on anything else. I hope you're enjoying this video. If you want to support Sporkman Studios, there's no better way than to go to getspork.com and find out where you can buy Sporkman comics, t-shirts, and other merchandise. Now back to the Transformers. We then get several issues with new characters, Megatron doesn't actually return, and we are led up to the Underbase storyline's climactic finale. In this oversized issue 50, Starscream absorbs the power of this ultimate cube of knowledge and begins laying waste to Autobots and Decepticons alike. Issue 51 brings a new logo design to the title to match the change on the toy packaging at this time. At this point, the toy lines were focused very heavily on Pretenders and Micromasters, and it definitely is reflected in the comics. Issue 57 brings us the true return of Megatron, and once again, he and Ratchet into conflict. However, only 2 issues later, both of their fates become unknown. I must say, for being the leader of the Decepticons, Megatron spends a good deal of time absent, or barely clinging to his command within the comic series. In issues 60 and 61, in the core of Cybertron is found Primus, the creator of the Transformers. During a battle, he is awoken, and his scream is heard far away by Unicron. The only thing that can stop Unicron is the Matrix, and that was shot into space along with Optimus Prime's body after he died in issue 24. At this point, the idea of the Matrix existing beyond the confines of a physical object are pretty much abandoned in favor of how it appeared in the animated movie. The next 5-issue Matrix Quest sees teams of Autobots sent to different worlds where the Matrix may have ended up. Also in pursuit of the Matrix is the Decepticon Thunderwing. Issue 67 takes us to the future in an alternate universe. Alternate cartoon universe, that is, which takes place post the Transformer animated film. In this dark tale, Galvatron and the Decepticons have won, and Rodimus Prime is dead. A few Autobots and humans, such as Spike, are making their last stand on a devastated Earth. As Galvatron is about to destroy the Resistance for good, 3 servants of Unicron from the comic universe snatch him away. As events are unfolding differently in his timeline, and he cannot acquire Megatron to reformat, Unicron decides to pull an already transformed Galvatron from this other universe to serve him. Hopefully that clarifies things. The next few issues build to what we all know to be the climactic battle with Unicron and... What the... Megatron and Ratchet are back in a fate worse than death. The battle with Unicron rages in the oversized issue 75. I must say this was a good battle. In some ways, it may even be better than the animated movie in that regard. There's just a lot of stuff going on, and a lot of it's really cool. In the end, Optimus Prime dies. Again. Only this time in heroic fashion. So, who's going to take the mantle of Autobot leader? Well, it won't be Rodimus Prime. That was a different universe, folks. Where do you go after Armageddon? On a search for nucleon fuel. Wait, what? Yeah, at this point Hasbro was producing what they called Action Masters. As dumb as it sounds, they thought it'd be a good idea to start making Transformers that didn't transform. They were 4-inch scale figures, which maybe would come with an accessory that would transform. Like, Jazz had a skateboard that turned into a big gun. Yeah, that was the thing that happened. So some characters, notably Grimlock, had gotten this super fuel nucleon, but it had the side effect where then you couldn't transform. Yeah. Issue 78 brings up the meeting between Megatron, now separated from Ratchet, and his alternate future self in the form of Galvatron. The series ends with issue 80. Optimus Prime returns, and sadly I'd say the series ends on a bit of a whimper. There was this big climactic battle with Unicron, and afterwards they just didn't have enough time to build to anything all that exciting. There were only a few writers and artists throughout the entire run of the comic series. Issue 5 through 55 was written by Bob Budiansky, and 56 through 80 by Simon Furman. My favorite artist was Andy Wildman. I thought he added a lot of detail to everything, like wear and tear on the Transformers. They truly looked battle-worn. However, his faces always looked a little too organic, so it was a bit of a trade-off. I also would like to give a nod to 2 other 4-issue limited series besides Headmasters. In 1987, there was a G.I. Joe vs. the Transformers crossover. The big event in this series was the destruction of Bumblebee, who then gets rebuilt as Goldbug, and then later goes back to Bumblebee as a pretender. Truly, this was to coincide with the toys of all these different versions. There was also Transformers Universe. Now, you may remember the tech specs that came on the back of the packaging on Transformer figures. This gave a photo, motto, and a short bio about the characters. Transformers Universe was essentially those, only in larger expanded form. Across the first 3 volumes, they were listed alphabetically, and then the 4th volume also featured characters from the movie. After this, they began to add a few bios like it in the back of each regular comic rather than a separate printed collection like this. Transformers kind of died off for a while until 1993, when Hasbro began to re-release old Transformer figures with new paint deco and branded Transformers Generation 2. However, Megatron did get re-envisioned as a tank. Generation 2 first got its start in the pages of G.I. Joe, where Cobra rebuilt Megatron and led into the launch of the main Transformers Generation 2 comic run. I really love the first issue cover, which came in a regular version and then a metallic version that folded open to reveal a battle scene. Why? Because it was the 90s and alternative covers were all the rage. Now, personally, besides that cover, I thought that art was absolute garbage, and the storyline not much better. And the series didn't last beyond 12 issues. One interesting thing to note was the creation of a new character named G-Axis, who leads a separate offshoot of the Decepticons. The character wasn't available in toy form, but was later repurposed as a prominent character in the IDW comics years later. Speaking of IDW, they gave writer Simon Furman and artist Andy Wildman the opportunity to finish the Marvel storyline as a limited series which would start where the Marvel comics ended, numbered 81 and ending the series off at issue 100. This series, titled Transformers Regeneration 1, continues the continuity of the Marvel run, even though it's under a different publisher. That does it for this retrospective of the original Marvel Comics Transformers series. Please like and subscribe. If there's two things that suck, it's monopolies and censorship. If you agree, then please support this channel on Rumble. I'm Eric from Sporkman Studios, and it's time to roll out.